Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird joining you live from Diriomo, Nicaragua. Just let me get us going right here on Instagram. Hope you're doing well this morning. Well, that's not good. We need to turn that audio off. There we go. Hope you're on, Dr. Stillman. Good to see you. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm well. How are you, Jim?
Good. We're already live,
I know. I
in
noticed.
case you didn't know.
Yep.
Doing very
Ready
well.
to rock
Thank
and
you.
roll.
Excellent. Excellent. So I think with this topic, I think the first thing that needs to happen is people need to kind of change their mindset, right? And not focus on, you know, essentially what their issue is. They need to focus on what they can do every single day in the moment to improve the outcome that they would like. Because a lot of people get overwhelmed with where they are, whether it's health or weight loss or low energy, and they kind of get overwhelmed and there's this big mountain of stuff. And they start thinking about why they're not making enough improvement, why they're not getting success, instead of focusing on the things they can control today, moment by moment.
Absolutely. Yes. I call that focusing on your wellness instead of focusing on your illness. We see a lot of people
Yes.
who've spent
No.
a lot of time focusing on their illness. They've learned everything about it. They've read every article. They've listened to every podcast. They've done every protocol. They've tried every supplement. They've read every book, and they're not any better. They will often come into programs with us with a jaundiced or skeptical view of what we are offering them, thinking, well, what could I possibly learn from this? I've already taken this person's course and I've done this person's boot camp and I did this protocol and that protocol and I've gone to see all these doctors. What are these people going to teach me that's different? But that's what's really unique about the way that we look at things is that I really don't see anyone else in the field who's got this breadth of a view, and that's the benefit of the two of us working together along with our whole team. You have 25 years of strength and conditioning experience, and you really didn't stop at just learning how to put more plates on the weight rack. You hung out with guys
And
like Rob
sometimes that,
Wolf.
sure.
What?
Sometimes that's the problem. Sometimes that's the problem. Putting more weights on the weight rack might be your problem.
Exactly. Exactly. But
Right.
it's very much the Hippocrates said something. He said, sometimes to do nothing is a good remedy. And only when you've practiced a lot and seen a lot of cases, and also seen a lot of really sick cases, and also seen a lot of really sick cases not do well or get better, do you start to think, well, maybe I could actually get people better results if I did less. And it's the same thing in the gym as it is in the hospital. And that's so funny. There's so many good quotes and so many good examples about this. Like Osler said, the new physician starts life with, 20 medications for every disease, and the old physician ends life with 4 medications for every disease. And I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't quite that, but he essentially meant that as you get better and better and you gain experience, you actually focus more on fewer things. And I heard somebody once talking about success. They said, some of you need to say less to more people. And what they meant was you need to go through and it's not about the volume of material. It's not about the complexity. It's not about, you know, endlessly learning. It's actually about implementation, and it's about focusing on particularly the 20% of what you need to do that's going to get you 80% of the results. And the sad thing is that not a lot of people really spend their time promoting and holding people accountable to doing that 20%.
Yeah. I mean, I hear over and over again when I talk to people and I start educating them on some basic fundamental habits that we've seen really move the needle for people. And they're like, I know that, I know that, I know that. But it's like, are you actually doing it?
Mhm.
Do you actually know what it means to relax? Do you actually know what it means to shut off? Are you trying to make an effort to live a more outdoor life? Most people are, overwhelmed with information. And for me, anyways, as a coach working with people every day, for, decades, my job is to take all this information and all this chatter and give them a few simple actionable things that they can do every single day consistently over time. And that's really what it's all about. And then you make adjustments along the way. But until you've nailed all the foundational things, you really got to be careful how many things you start chasing, because endless that's an endless game, right?
It is.
Because there's
It's
always
true.
something new, there's always something else. You always run out of therapeutic runway to steal a term from you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think the number one thing I start with, anyways, when I talk to people is the light component, really the outdoor component, because most people in the Western world just live their entire life indoors
Right.
and are scared to death of the sun. And the sun just basically controls so many things that people haven't even thought about. Everything from detoxification to, of course, vitamin D, regulation of immune system, regulation of digestion, all these things. I think circadian rhythm is probably the most overlooked thing in the health and wellness space. It's linked to just about everything you could possibly imagine. And we start there. I mean, if people aren't getting outside at least a couple times a day, the chances of them being healthy and being in a good place and being able to make good decisions and if their sleep is messed up because they don't go outside, that's just a cascade for disaster. I don't care how many supplements you take. I don't care what you're doing. If you're not getting outside, if you're not getting some sunlight, if your sleep isn't decent, it's going to be very difficult for you to improve no matter whether you have an autoimmune disease or whether you want to lose some weight or lose body fat. If you have a performance goal, those things are just not going to happen as easily if you're sleep deprived and your circadian rhythm is crushed.
Absolutely. Yes. And this, of course, is why we put together these 5 essentials or fundamentals in a quick start guide, which we actually just are wrapping up filming today. It's going to be the last 2 episodes. We're filming those this afternoon. And we really want people to understand these essentials that we're going to talk about in the rest of today's webinar as where we start everyone. They are the 20% that gives you the 80% of the results. Now, in truth, I'm not actually sure I can say that they're the 80% because there's a lot more that we like to do to dial people in, but they're essentially non-negotiable when it comes to getting significant, sustainable, durable results. And they're the things that we see people being sadly grossly misinformed on by the uh, by what the noise and confusion in the health and wellness space. It's not that people out there are not well intentioned. It's not that they don't want to help people, but I'm reminded of the fact that just yesterday I saw a post. It was a panel of people who were at a health and wellness retreat, speaking, and somebody I knew was on the panel. I know him pretty well. I know his paradigm pretty well, and it is grossly, grossly wrong. And it's a little bit sobering and sad and scary all at the same time to see how much misinformation there is out there. And I don't use that term lightly. It gets thrown around a lot by people who are just trying to keep people from the truth. But I do see this as just we constantly get people in the practice who've listened to all the podcasts and done all the things, read all the articles, and we still have to walk them through these fundamentals because one of the things about these fundamentals is they're easy to talk about, but actually dialing them in and doing them correctly for the maximum benefit requires some attention to detail. And that's where many people fall down or end up misdirected. And that lack of attention to detail winds up sometimes completely derailing their success. So we're packing that quick start guide where we cover the critical elements, the brass tacks, the bottom line. It's really fast, efficient. It's the most hard hitting content I would say Jim and I have ever produced. That is in our Optimal Wellness membership, which you can join at stillmanwellness.com. It's less than $1 a day. It's $30 a month or $29.99 monthly subscription. You'll also get access to Q&As with us. And you can also upgrade to the VIP, where you get access to 3 of the best courses we've ever made, thyroid, weight loss, and testosterone. So there's something in there for everyone. Okay, Jim, the first one that we talked about is sunlight, circadian rhythms. We tackle that with a simple habit, taking 3 10-minute walks a day.
Yeah, and that's the minimum. That's the minimum that you need to do. Preferably, we want people to spend more time than that outside, but
Mhm.
that seems to move the needle for a lot of people, particularly people that haven't gone outside at all in a long time. It's a good place to start.
Yes.
Um, and it's all about accountability. And we have to remind people continuously, okay, are you doing your 3 10-minute walks? Are you getting outside? Well, I kind of got busy or whatever. At least, but the very least, get outside. Like go sit on your patio like I am right now. We understand most people don't have the ability to live an outdoor life like I do, but
Yeah.
you need to be moving in that direction if you wanna make some improvements in your overall situation.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the second thing that we start people with is drinking high quality spring water, which we won't get into all the details of that here, but people are just, and that's because we created the course. You can go take the course if you want all the brass tacks, which is really, I think it's fascinating. It's really fun. I mean, I think it's fascinating how we get into all the little details of why we picked this or picked that. But we see that people are grossly underhydrated very, very commonly. And a lot of that is because people don't appreciate that your level of hydration has to take into account your unique context. Somebody who's working outside in a very hot environment does not have the same hydration requirements as someone who is, indoors in a climate controlled environment. And somebody who's, you know, 300 pounds doesn't have the same requirement as somebody who's 85 or 100. So all that matters, but people don't drink high quality spring water. They settle for tap water. They settle for poor quality bottled water. They make the gross mistake of drinking water that's not been remineralized. That is one of the number one rookie mistakes we see people making because they actually desperately need the minerals in that spring water to run their fundamental physiology, which is a big part of why we see people doing so well when we put them on mineral balancing protocols. We multiply the number of minerals or the quantity of minerals coming into their system by 2, 3, 4, 5 fold or more sometimes. And that's part of the secret to the power of mineral balancing, which of course people can learn more about in the other content we've made on that. We have tons and tons of videos out there. Jim, what's the
Well,
third
the
thing we
funny thing
start
about
people with?
that, well, before we move on to that, it's funny, people will complain that, spring water is expensive or getting RO water and remineralizing
Right.
is an inconvenience. But then they'll
Or it
go out
doesn't
with their
taste good.
friends on the weekend and have yeah, or they'll go out with their friends on the weekend and they'll have like, they'll have 4 or 5 cocktails at dinner and drop, you go in the States, you start having a number of cocktails, you're running 50, 60, $70. That could have bought you your whole week's spring water and more, so it's all about priorities, right?
Absolutely. It is all about priorities.
And then we got protein next. And that's a biggie. And people are it's kind of a war on protein.
Right.
Getting people away from eating things like meat and chicken, fish. Um, and people are just, you've got to keep muscle mass if you want to um be relatively lean and healthy. You've got to maintain muscle mass. Not to mention, we get into detail on this, but protein is such an important part of the base level of what you need to sleep and do all these other activities. Not alone exercise and work out the repair necessary, but most people are grossly under eating it, and it plays a huge role in your neural regulation of appetite. So it's a big one.
It's a game changer for most people. I mean, most people who are coming to us are dealing with, I'll give a very specific example. They're dealing with fatigue and they're dealing with brain fog. Well, what do you need in order to make neurotransmitters and hormones that support your brain in firing optimally and coordinating optimally, which is what I would say it needs to do in order to not be foggy? And what do you need to make in order to have energy for your cells to create energy? You need hormones, you need neurotransmitters, you need a stable, reliable source of essentially reduced carbon, which is a fancy word for calories that your body can then break down. to release energy and make water and CO2. And all of that is a long way of saying that protein is a critical part of the diet. Now, where it's gotten a bad rap, and we unpack this more in the course, which we encourage you all to join the membership and take, because it's a very, I mean, it's stuff you won't hear anywhere else, all in one place. The thing that's happened is people have looked at the diets of those who live a long time and have said, oh, well, the people who live a long time don't eat a lot of protein. Well, very often they're asking them, how much protein do you eat late in life, which is not the same as your requirements in your youth. And the requirements for protein of somebody who's under a lot of stress are not the same as those as someone who is not. If you want to eat a low protein diet, you are going to want to live a low stress lifestyle. And that's just a simple matter of how much protein is going to be consumed making hormones and neurotransmitters, let alone building muscle and maintaining your body's structure. I mean, the wear and tear that we put on the body in the gym or at work or at sport, is not trivial, and it actually can change your protein needs. That's why anyone who's ever coached high performance athletes for even, a moment, they know that you cannot restrict their protein. You might have a target that's not as high for one as another, but it's all tailored to the individual. And that is something that's lost on a lot of people in the health and wellness space who just push this low protein, high plant diet, which in all honesty is a great thing for many people to do as sort of a reset or a cleanse, if you want to look at it that way. But it's not what people need in order to be optimally healthy and achieve their goals long term.
Well, on the opposite end of that, we've got people that are so obsessed with fat and eliminating carbs that they actually eat um, so much. They get so much fat in their diet that they have a hard time getting enough protein in. So we've got that
Absolutely.
side of it as well. And
Right.
then getting people to understand, what is sustainable and what is going to last for you over the long term. What might give you results for a short period of time might not be the same as the long term strategy, right?
Right. What's fourth on the list, Jim?
Get the lights off at night, and
Right.
that's just goes right in with the first one. Like, if you spend more time outside during the day, and then you come home and you're glued to your phone or you're sitting in front of your TV watching Netflix, you've just destroyed your entire day, you know. And
And
our
people have
modern
just,
world,
yeah,
go ahead, go ahead.
people have just shifted their days into the evenings, and it's not a good decision. Yesterday, Michelle and I went to downtown Naples and played pickleball for a couple of hours in the evening. And we didn't pick the start time. We let somebody else pick the start time, and they picked 6:30 p.m. And we're driving
Of
home, and
course.
I'm thinking to myself, we had a late lunch, we had no dinner. It's 8:30. You know, I'm going to get home in 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to eat at 9 o'clock, and then I'm going to go to sleep an hour and a half later. And I woke up this morning really tired and thinking, and I said to Michelle, we have to go to bed earlier. And people don't recognize how many things they're shifting into their evenings and how much better they feel when they shift those things into the afternoons, the middays, and the mornings. And they're not protective of their time enough. They allow things that do not matter to take precedence over the things that matter most. And that's a lot of us helping people comes down to helping them define their priorities. Because one of the number one reasons that we see that people fall ill is that and feel that they need our care or our coaching is that they're falling short in some critical aspect of their life, but it's because they haven't been willing to sacrifice things that needed to be sacrificed for them to achieve a goal. Maybe that's their cocktails with dinner. Maybe it's their, current consumption of fried foods. Maybe it's their tap water. Maybe it's their soda. Maybe it's their exercise addiction. We see it all. But at the end of the day, people need to realize that success ultimately is about a lot of trade offs, and you cannot do it all. I read recently someone made a comment you can't win a gold medal in two sports, and you can win a gold medal in multiple uh, different events in the same sport. But Michael Phelps is not out there winning the pole vaulting contest after winning some kind of swimming event. And people have this expectation of, well, I can be the greatest, at my profession, and I can be the greatest parent, and I can be the greatest spouse, and I can be the greatest family member or son or daughter. And that's not true. You have to pick and choose, and you have to actually get to know yourself and ask yourself, what are my strengths? And Jim and I talk about this a lot. We talk about the fact that Jim and I are completely opposite in terms of our shape and our structure. And so the sports that I'd be really good at, Jim is not going to be good at. The sports that Jim is going to be really good at, I am never going to be very good at. And if we try and succeed at the sport the other person is going to be good at, we actually don't just run certainty of relative failure, but we also are very likely to wind up injuring ourselves. Or in Jim's case, if he jumps into the water, which is a place where I'm very comfortable, I love diving. He's likely to sink and drown.
I'm good at diving. I'm just not good at coming back up to the surface. That's the problem. So
That's a good way
if
of
I could
looking
stay
at it.
under
Yeah.
the water, if I could stay under the water the whole time, I'd be okay.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like if you have a bad night every now and then, where you stay up a little too late, maybe you eat a little too late, body's really resilient. It's going to handle that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it night after night after night for years and years upon end, it has consequences, and most people don't think about these things.
Right. And there's a lot more that we have to share in the course. So jump in and roll, take it. You'll get a lot out of it. And yeah, it's as simple as
Well,
you have to
mhm.
have darkness at night for proper circadian rhythms, for optimal health, for optimal well-being. I just read a book that we're going to be covering on my podcast over at the Substack. And I'm going to unpack this on the podcast episode itself. But, the author writes about how he developed cancer at a very early age, despite a very healthy diet, healthy lifestyle. We see that in patients all the time. They do everything right, and yet something goes horribly, horribly wrong. And we have to figure out, well, what did they miss? That's essentially the job. And one of the key things is this guy liked to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. And I wonder to this day if he's actually figured out that may have been a part of why he developed cancer. But anyway,
You just had all the Jocko fans just screamed at you and burn him at the stake.
discipline is freedom.
That's right. Well, there is a certain truth to that, but hey,
There's certain truth to that, but it's yeah.
if you're watching, please give us a like. Please share. It would really help us to spread the word on this. We're really trying to help simplify things for people. There's so much confusion out there. So if you could help us spread the word on that, we'd appreciate it. And the
We do
last one
appreciate
is
it.
often overlooked is the social connection of it. And one of the books that I've given away probably hundreds of copies to over the years was The Great Cholesterol Myth. And they go over a number of studies that they did on people. There was a group of people in Pennsylvania. It was kind of like a mining town, industrial town, didn't have the greatest diet. A lot of them smoked and drank, but they didn't have negative health outcomes. And they figured out over time, it was that the fact they had great community, great social connection, people weren't lonely, people were not disconnected. That was a huge factor. So that's a massive factor. And people are more connected now than ever, but people are lonelier than ever. There's more SSRIs, there's more antidepressants, there's more people, binge drinking, because I don't think people are connecting. Before I left Florida, I remember I was at Chipotle or something like that, and there was a group of teenagers. They were all around the table, and they weren't talking, they were texting each other. And it was just like, this is like the Twilight Zone, right? And so
Mhm.
we've basically created this world where we're always in contact and always on the phone, but we never have these personal, meaningful interactions, right? And
Right.
so that's a super important part of this whole process is getting to know people, getting to have people that you connect with, and you can have a meaningful relationship or with, and that's just been totally obliterated in today's world.
It has, and I think that it's one of the things that I think modern science has done the poorest job of studying in a rigorous way, in part because it's very hard to study. But when you do bother to look at how our social lives affect our overall health and wellness, there's absolutely no debate that you have to have positive community social interaction. You have to have a community that you're a part of that's part of why people who go to church live longer. And what I find ironic about that is that there's all these things that when you get into the social sciences and psychology, it's very clear that there's things that are good for people. Like, for example, this has been making the rounds on social media recently. It turns out that women who have more children later in life, not necessarily all their children later in life, but like children in their 40s or their 30s, live longer than the women who don't. And there's some questions about, well, was that there because they were able to have children or they weren't able to have children? So there's some variables that need to be sorted out. But just this notion of, well, maybe we should be telling women that they should have children, more children than they are. Maybe, for example, marriage. It's very well documented that married men live longer. Why are people shrieking about, oh, well, you've got to do this or do that? You all have to conform to my version of public health, right? But we're not out there holding a gun to men's heads and saying, you've got to get married. It's good for you, right? Just like we're not holding a gun to anybody's head. You've got to go to the grocery store and buy vegetables, or saying you can't keep your job if you don't lose 20 pounds or whatever. And it's very funny when you stop to think about it, because I mean, I'd like to think I shouted from the rooftops. Things like going to church is good for people. Things like getting married is good for people. Having some kids seems to be very good for people. And even if there's some confounding variables there, it's really worth asking questions about and talking to people about, because I think that what we've seen is that many people wind up in toxic relationships. And obviously there's something, it should be mentioned that many people wind up sick because they're in, say, a bad church, or they're in an unhealthy marriage, or they've got, people in their lives with real psychological issues. But part of what we do is we help people understand what healthy relationships look like. And I've been actually somewhat surprised, if not outright shocked, by the fact that people who've gone to therapy and church and everything in between will come back to us and say, it was you and the coaching and hearing it from you the way you put it that helped me put my relationships in the proper perspective and to draw the boundaries I needed to draw in order to be a healthier, happier person. And all these problems that had been blamed on this and that and the other thing, many real diseases that I don't want to dismiss or minimize or label as sort of psychosomatization, but many real issues and illnesses that they'd been told they had evaporated when they created the right social environment and connection. And that was very powerful for me, learning as a physician that I can't leave that to the psychologists. I can't leave it to the psychotherapists. Certainly can't leave it to the psychiatrists, because they just want to put everybody on drugs and then just manage them up and down, whether or not it works for them. And, say nothing of the side effects, which are horrific when you look at them. But yeah, we have to get people into positive social connection and relationship. And all of these things are covered in more detail, the detail you need, and not a bit more, in our Optimal Wellness membership, which we encourage all of you to sign up for. We appreciate our subscribers and our members. We love coaching you guys, and hope we'll see you on our next coaching call, which is this Thursday, right? No, wait, hang on. This is a fifth Thursday.
Yeah,
in the
so it'll
month.
be the week after. Look, I
Right.
have one tomorrow night. Well, the
Right.
VIP group, not in the Optimal Wellness
Yep.
membership. But
So in 2 weeks, we've got Q&A
I'm gonna
with Jim and I at 11 on Thursday. We would love to see you all there.
I'm gonna get burned at the stake upside down. But when you take a biological organism who by nature has been given a certain purpose,
Mhm.
and you take that purpose away from it, that might create a problem.
Mhm.
Just might,
I agree.
you know. So
And
burn me at the stake upside
it's
down.
funny. I was just listening to somebody who pointed out that in the Bible, God asks man two very important questions. He said, "Where are you?" And he asked, "Why are you here?" And I think that's a very thought provoking. I think I thought it was very, he was making the point, the speaker, it was Les Brown. Actually, I'll tell people where I found this. It was Les Brown. He was being interviewed by my friend and mentor, Richard Brooke, on his podcast, The Authentic Networker. And he was having this conversation with a pastor. And he said, you preach the gospel and you talk about Jesus. but you gloss over the fact that God asks man these questions, these very important questions. And they are very important questions, because the first question that Jim or I are going to ask you, if you're a patient, if you're coaching with us, and we may not ask it directly, but we will ask you indirectly. We will ask you, what is your goal? Which is, what are you doing here? And then we'll ask you a lot of questions about where you are in relationship to that goal, because we're trying to figure out, you want to go from A to B, and here's why you want to go from A to B, and why you care about B and what B looks like. And here's A, where you are, and here's what it looks like, and here's how it feels. Now, how are we going to get you from A to B the right way? And that's not necessarily the fastest way. It's not necessarily the longest way either, but it is the way that honors your biology, your wiring, how you're created, quite literally, uh, in that honors it as it should be.
Anthony says, thank you so much for the valuable information.
Good to
You're
see you here,
welcome,
Anthony. Thank you for tuning in.
And then Travis says, thank you so much for the pep talk. Blessings on your day. Thank you as well. That's
Thank
a
you,
lot of
Travis.
what we do, is help people from getting too frustrated. So,
and keeping
thanks for
things in the
joining us today.
proper perspective. Yeah,
That is correct. And avoiding the complexity and the overwhelm of the information fire hose that you are presented with every day when you open your phone or computer. So
absolutely.
I hope
Yes.
you guys have a wonderful day. Make sure you get outside today. Get on our email list. This week, we're talking about the misconceptions around hormone replacement. We're actually going to have our nurse practitioner, Lauren, on the call with us. You got to get on the email list for that. You
Yes.
can go to stillmanwellness.com. You can download our quick start guide, stillmanwellness.com/quick start. Get on the email list. You'll get an email Wednesday night. You'll be able to register for that webinar. And we look forward to seeing you there.
That's right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and don't forget to get outside.